Okay. So the Rebbe says over here that the point of the army and the foundation of its existence is Kabbalah Soul. Kabbalah Soul is, again, when you accept the yoke, what you need to do. Even when given an intellectual command, it's forbidden for one to wait until he understands it. Because by doing so, this can endanger all the soldiers and the war. Rather, the main thing is to do it. So basically, in practical terms, sometimes you come across something. You come across something in halacha. You come across advice from a tzaddik, from a Rebbe. And a person might say, I don't know if this is really for me. Does it make sense? Should I be doing this? Does it matter? So the Rebbe is saying, it's forbidden to wait until you understand it, and not trust the importance of it. All this applies even to a soldier who is very intelligent in military tactics. We will do must come before we will hear. That's called nasa v'nishma. You do, and then you understand. So if you, God willing, in the coming year, we're going to be hearing a lot of pieces of advice from the Rebbe, and a person may not fully understand it, but we should know that this comes from our commander-in-chief. The importance is to do it, and then eventually we'll try to understand it. We didn't just say nasa without nishma. No one ever said that Judaism, for example, is some sort of cult where you just do and you do and you do and you don't ask questions. Rather, what do we say? Nasa v'nishma. The nasa comes before nishma. The do comes before the understanding. If I could give a mashal on this, an example. What would happen, chas v'shalom, somebody was in an accident or something, and they have to have an emergency surgery. The person is bleeding in the organs, whatever. Imagine if they would get to the hospital and the doctor went to medical school and the residency and has been a surgeon for 24 years, says that in this situation we have to do such and such operation to stop the bleeding and compress and sew this and compress that, and a very complicated thing. Imagine the person is bleeding, he's going to say, wait a second, I don't understand it. So before we do it, I want to understand it. So I want to delay doing what's essential at this point. What's going to happen to the person? Okay.
In other words, yes.
So if we're talking about a physical Yiskadav Yiskadash, how much more so a spiritual thing? In other words, this is the foundation of Yiddishkeit, that we have to try to understand everything we need to, but we still have to remember that there's things which come down. How do we know if it's true? How do we know if we have to do it? And I want to get into, how do you know what's like black and white? No compromises. How do you know if you have to do it or not?
Shulchan Aruch says.
Correct. If it's in Shulchan Aruch, then you have to do it. Now, then you get the things which are not in Shulchan Aruch. Sometimes you have things which the Rebbe advises. So they may not be clear halachos, this and that. It's not an Aveda if you transgress it, and it's not, you're failing on doing a mitzvah if you don't do it. But nevertheless, when the Rebbe advises us to do something, it's for the best of our neshama. It's for the best that we should eventually be able to keep Shulchan Aruch with enthusiasm and what we call in Hebrew a chayis, a vitality. So these things we have to work on doing also, and even if we don't understand it. Now sometimes a person might not know the order, and it's a lot. And what should I, if I can't at this moment, I feel I can't do everything at one time. So where do I start? So for that also has an answer. What's the answer to that question? In other words, let's say a person feels overwhelmed. There's a lot of extra things he wants to do, but he feels if he does too many of them at one time, again, Shulchan Aruch is something which we can't compromise on. If it says it, we have to do it. But what if it's something that, it's a good thing that Rebbe wants and advises, but there's so many good things, so how do we know, in other words, the goal should be to do them all. But how do we know the order in which takes precedence? What should we do first? Anyone know? Before I give the answer, does everyone understand the question? No? Sasha, you understood the question? So what's the answer? You have a whole bunch of things to do. Take a guess?
Pick and cheese.
No. Correct. You have a mashpia. Concept of a selech harav. The Rebbe said you have a rabbi in your life. You choose one rabbi who understands you, And therefore, when you want to take on extra things, and things which the Rebbe advises, you meet, you talk once in a while. Usually it's good to, what I do when I speak to my mashpi, before I call him, I a lot of times write things down on a piece of paper, because I have to be sensitive to his time and not just, keep something on the phone for 30 minutes when I just have a few questions. I write it down. I think what I want to say, call, and sometimes they're 5-minute or less conversations. And I just get my answer. I know that way I'm connected to the letter. Okay, back to the letter. All this applies, even if the commander is a cripple, heaven forbid, and full of deficiencies, as long as it was ordinated to be a commander by the head of a general, he must obey him. As mentioned, the fate of the entire country depends on fulfilling what he commands. If this applies by a commander of flesh and blood, how much more so does this apply to the King of all kings, which is Hashem? Alright, that was a sikha, that was an answer, Chof Teves, Tavshin Chof Zayin. Okay. The one more short one. This is from Sikha Shmini Tavshin Yud Ches, 1958. When the Rebbe asked that the Talmidim to travel to outlying towns, he asked them, sometimes he wanted students to go to the city, and a lot of places. Boston, Massachusetts, there was a group sent, and they were sent to Morocco. Different people would go to different places. So when the Rebbe asked that the Talmidim to travel to certain places, they did not first settle it with their father-in-law, and mother-in-law. They also did not make calculations that if they would learn more time in yeshiva, it would have added in their learning, because they knew that they are soldiers, and a soldier does nothing else aside from fulfilling instructions of the commander. That was in 1958. He's referring to, we're talking about the times of the Friedrich Rebbe. The Friedrich Rebbe wanted Bachram to go to certain places, certain towns, and obviously the reason you go there is because there are small places that needed a strengthening Yiddishkeit, and there should be a learning and minyanim and Yiddishkeit happening. So he says they didn't, when they were asked by the Friedrich Rebbe to do it, they didn't check with their father-in-law and this, and I guess married people here, mother-in-law. They were asked to do something, and they did it without questions, and that's a sign of a true soldier.